Hi guys, this is ZonalFear ET Gaming. Today I want to give you a rather brief update on my first month with the Asus ROG Ally. I've been using it for, admittedly, it's a little over a month now, and I've got some extra things that I want to say about it, and yeah, I thought that I'd just cover them in a fairly, well, what I assume to be a fairly short video. We'll see. All of my videos are done unscripted, so what happens is I simply go into my gaming room, I sit down, and then I just go. So I've not got anything prepared in front of me to specifically talk about, and this is all just coming off the top of my head, so bear with me. I've been using the Asus ROG Ally now for about a month, and there are a lot of things that I like about the machine, more so now that I've actually had opportunity to sit down and use the machine. There are a couple of things that I really don't like though, and they've become more obvious the more I've used the machine. So let's go over the couple of plus points that I want to mention first. I have a gaming PC. A lot of you guys who are watching will also have a gaming PC or maybe an Xbox or something, and whatever you want. And I've noticed that for the less demanding games over the last month or so, I've been using my Ally rather than my gaming PC. I have an AMD Ryzen 5 and GTX 1080 Ti based PC. It's getting on a little bit. Well, the 1080 Ti is getting on a little bit. It's getting on a little bit, but it's more than capable of playing everything that I want it to play still. And the thing is, when I go and load up a game like, say, Fallout New Vegas, I'm using a lot of power for a game that actually really doesn't require a lot of power. I've been finding myself turning on my Ally and using that rather than using my main PC and trying to keep my energy bills down a little bit, such as the age that we live in. And yeah, I've just noticed that I've been doing that more for my less demanding games. There is something that I want to bring up about the ROG Ally's performance though, and that is something that I found out that I didn't know when I made my initial video. The Ally has a turbo 30 watt mode available for it. When you select the turbo 30 watt mode, it also does something else that I'm not hugely keen on. So what happens when you first load up a game in turbo mode is it seems to activate a kind of turbo mode where the Ally will feed as much power as it can to the APU to, I'm not sure what the reason is exactly, to get the game going or something like that. But anyway, so the usual performance is 30 watts on the APU. However, this turbo mode can actually increase the APU power consumption significantly. So I've had the Asus monitoring software on when I've loaded up, say, Fallout 4 or something, and that turbo mode has used nearly 50 watts of power. I've seen 48 watts going down to the APU alone in this turbo mode. It's not a permanent mode, it's a very short-lived sort of boost up as you initially start games and stuff like that. And I believe that you can change this by editing the registry so that you're able to see more advanced power options, including how to stop the CPU boosting even when it's under quite a lot of load. So I'll probably do a video about that at some point in the future. I need to test it out. I've not really had an awful lot of opportunity over the last week or so to do as much as I would like to do in just sort of general testing regards. But yeah, I believe that can be disabled, so it's not a massive issue. But on a machine that has I think it's a 40 watt hour battery, the APU boosting and using nearly as much as a desktop processor in its initial boost phase is actually a big thing. It will decrease the amount of time you get out of your battery quite considerably. So yeah, I don't like that. The unit also gets quite hot, as well as being able to use nearly 50 watts of power. The temperature can reach above 95 degrees. This isn't usually a huge issue on a mobile chip. It's worth remembering that mobile chips, they are generally rated to around 105 degrees. So 95 isn't, I mean, it's warm, but it wouldn't be something that made me look at it and go, wow, that's not good at all. You wouldn't want to keep it sustained at 95 degrees, but occasionally hitting 95, it wouldn't cause me too much concern. But that makes the whole unit quite warm, especially in handheld mode. So yeah, it's something that I thought was worth mentioning. Another thing worth mentioning as well is you'll recall in my original video how I had quite a lot of complaint about the SD card slot. Well, guys, I just want to say that my SD card slot has magically not fixed itself, so there's no change there. I did replace the NVMe drive in the machine, and I changed it from I think it's a 512 micron drive. Changed it to a 1 terabyte Corsair MP600. Just 1 second, I can see the box from here. Yeah, it looks like an MP600 mini, so another 2230 drive. And I will say that it's annoying that I feel like I had to change it because of the SD card slot issues. However, it was a very easy change. I actually changed the NVMe drives of 2 Allies on the day that I upgraded my own, and they were both quite easy experiences. So I will say, don't be afraid to try changing the NVMe drive yourself, especially if you're having SD card issues. My household has 2 Allies, and the SD card slots in both Allies have never worked. I purchased mine pre-owned from an electronics retailer. However, the other one was purchased new from Amazon, and the SD card slot has not functioned at all. I actually think it functions even less than mine, because mine will at least recognize that an SD card has been inserted, even if I can't use it, whereas the other one simply does not function at all. So yeah, that's not magically changed, but the NVMe drive upgrade was fairly easy to manage. So there is that. Speaking of the NVMe drive upgrade very briefly, when I upgraded the first Ally, there is an option in the ROG BIOS called Secure Boot. So on the initial Ally that I upgraded, Secure Boot wasn't enabled, and I was simply able to swap the drives out quite easily. But on my Ally, unbeknown to me, the Secure Boot option was enabled. So when I took out the drive and put in a new drive, it told me that it basically would not function. Because Secure Boot was enabled and it wanted the original NVMe drive. So I had to go into the BIOS with the original drive and change the Secure Boot to off before I could actually upgrade my own drive. So just worth bearing in mind if you do decide to tackle that. As well as the sort of NVMe card issues and things like that. Sorry, not the NVMe card, the SD card issues and things like that. I will also say that after using the ROG Ally for a bit over a month, I actually think that I prefer the Steam Deck's controller layout. So I'm not saying that the Ally is uncomfortable, far from it. It's easy to use and not a major thing to. I wouldn't say don't buy one based on this alone, but I found that the Steam Deck, it feels more comfortable. The grip of the handheld machine feels more comfortable. I'm not particularly a fan, now I've used it more, of the Ally's more pronounced edges. I prefer the Steam Deck's sort of curvier sort of layout for the controls. So that's another minus point versus the Steam Deck. Overall, though, I am fairly happy with my Ally, even a month in. When it comes to gaming, gaming handheld at any cost, I think that as a machine, it's fantastic. There's nothing really that comes that close to it, I don't think. It performs better than the Steam Deck. All of the games that I had so-so performance on the Steam Deck perform considerably better on the Ally. So if this was going to be your main sort of way that you play PC games, and you want a performance at all costs, then I could easily recommend the Ally above the Steam Deck. The Steam Deck itself, I could also easily recommend if all you want to do is get into a little bit of PC gaming handheld. I think that it's a fantastic, well-designed, easy to use, consumer-friendly platform. And if you were to ask me which one would I recommend for someone just getting into sort of handheld PC gaming, I would probably gravitate towards the Steam Deck just for how simple, easy it is to use. The battery life is pretty good, and it's overall just a nice machine to actually play. One of the things that has changed an opinion for me ever so slightly is in the last couple of days, the ROG Ally now has AMD frame generation. This is a pretty big thing actually, and I need to do a video about that at some point. So previously on my channel, you will have seen that I played Helldivers 2, 1600 by 900, 30 FPS on the Ally. With AMD frame generation, that has changed how I play Helldivers 2 on the handheld. You can now enable AMD frame generation for Helldivers 2, and not only is the frame rate better, but you can also bump up the resolution as well. It's a conflicting technology, I must admit. So it has dramatically improved Helldivers 2. But like a lot of things with the ROG Ally, there is a but. And the but is that it introduces some latency into your game, and it's not going to be for everyone. So when your Ally is generating, when your Ally is running at 60 frames per second, ideally what you want the AMD frame generation to be doing as well is you're going to want it to be as low as it possibly can go. And I think it's 16.66 for 60 FPS. So ideally you want the frame generation lag to be 16.66 or lower. When it goes higher, you're going to feel that in the frame rate by stuttering. You're going to feel it in the controls by delayed response. So ideally you want it at that number, and it doesn't always achieve that. So when I was playing Helldivers 2 yesterday with frame generation, sometimes the frame generation delay was 7 to 8 milliseconds, which is fantastic. That's the kind of figure that is ideal. But then at other points, the frame generation delay would go up to 30, 40 milliseconds, and you could immediately feel it in the controls as well as see it in the game performance. Now, if your game didn't perform particularly well anyway in the first place, I think that this is going to change that game quite dramatically. However, the latency, the frame gen latency, might be an issue for some people. Some people can simply get around it. They don't notice it, or they don't care that much. But other people, it would really bother. So when the frame delay went to above 30-40 milliseconds on Helldivers 2 yesterday, I did notice it, and it did bother me. However, I think that going forward, that's going to be a really interesting technology, especially for handhelds like the Steam Deck, like the Ally, as it changed how I was able to present the game to myself from 1600 by 900 to 1080p, and yeah, I think it needs improvement, but there's a really exciting future there. What that can do for handheld gaming consoles is remarkable, as well as, of course, low-end graphics cards as well on main PCs. So yeah, I'm going to do a video about that. It's really interesting, and I look forward to actually doing that one. As for things like battery life and stuff like that, they're not particularly amazing on the Ally. I think that if you're out and about a lot and all you want to go for is longevity, then the Steam Deck, quite frankly, just wins it hands down. In a really demanding game, that battery can last little over an hour. When you set it to 10 watt mode, you might get maybe 2 or so hours out of it. But overall, I think that the battery life is it's acceptable. like more than a few things I've mentioned, there are trade-offs. You know, you got to get something, you got to give something up, and I think the ROG Ally is a shining example of things that you have to give up versus things that you get. It's not a no compromise machine. It's a you're going to have to compromise on something. You know, whether that be an issue with the storage and the SD card slots, whether that be lower battery life, things like that. Whether it be using a slightly more uncomfortable controller, but again, that is that is something that's up to the individual ultimately. I guess it's very subjective how comfortable a controller is. I prefer the deck controller. You might prefer the Ally controller, but it feels like to get something you have to give something up with the Ally. So you give up your battery life, but get great game performance. So yeah, it's just it really is a compromise console, I think, and I like it overall. I still like it a month in. There are some limitations to it though, and they become a lot more obvious since I actually started using the machine pretty much on a daily basis. One of the other massive plus points I think that the Ally has though is that I know a lot of people don't like Windows, but hear me out. You can use it as your main PC. It will do all the things that your desktop PC will do, and it could essentially replace your main PC. Let's say you have an old PC from like 10 years ago. You could go out and you could buy an Ally, put it on a dock, connect a keyboard and mouse up to it, and shove a HDMI cable in the back of the dock, and it will replace your aging PC. And I think that is actually more of a benefit than maybe I've really discussed. You can do all your video editing and things like that on. So yeah, I think that's a massive plus point, even if a lot of people don't like Windows, and that's fine. But I see it as a massive plus point. And the other Ally in my home is actually used as a main PC as well as a gaming console. So yeah, I think that also has a massive benefit to it as well. I want to talk about a couple of other things very, very briefly, non-Ally related. So I'll try and keep it short, and I realise I'm going on a little bit now. There's going to be a project coming up on my channel soon, the 10p processor. I'm going to quickly describe it. So I was out and about in Doncaster a couple of weeks ago, and I came across a 10 pence Intel processor. It's actually an Intel Celeron processor, one of the first LGA 1155 CPUs. I think I've actually got a fan on it at the moment, so I can't see the processor model, but I believe it was the Intel Celeron G530. I purchased a 1155 motherboard. I didn't have access to an 1155 motherboard, believe it or not. I now do. However, there is an issue with that as well. And the issue is that I bought an OEM board, so it's not quite proprietary, but there are a couple of interesting ports on it. There's one actually I'm really excited about. However, while I was putting it all together on the bench, I noticed that the CPU fan connector is a little bit different to the stock Intel's CPU fan connectors. I've ordered the part to swap that over, but that's delayed this project quite considerably. I was planning on having all this done last week. I've ordered the part for it that will change that so that the board is usable with regular stuff. But I'm not sure how long that's going to be. It's not coming from this country, so one of the reasons why I actually picked up this board very briefly is that it has two PCI Express ports. So it has a PCIe 16 and what looks like a PCI Express 4-lane slot. So that's going to be really interesting. I'm going to test a graphics card in both those slots, not just with the Celeron, but also with another processor that I bought that also works on 1155, a Intel Core i5 2400 CPU. So yeah, that's going to be really interesting. I've also got an AM3 board that I'm not using. So we'll be testing the Phenoms as well as an Athlon that was gifted to me by a friend. So we're going to get that on the bench board at some point. And yeah, just wow. Honestly, guys, I've got so much to do, and so little time to do it that I don't even know where to start. But yeah, that's all coming up in the future. Thank you guys very much for listening and watching my video today. If you like my stuff, please consider subscribing. And yeah, there's going to be a lot more projects coming up in the near future. Until next time, guys, take care. Bye bye.